Welcome everybody to this week's Webinar Wednesday. Appreciate everybody coming in and joining us. First thing I'd like to kick off here is if you have any questions, please post them to the Q&A section. That way we can track whatever questions you have there and keep a better record of it than just putting it in chat. Really helps myself and the other moderators and participants be able to handle those questions easier. So with that, we're going to kick it off. If you don't know who XenTegra is, or if you do, you're going to get a quick breakdown on XenTegra, as well as myself. Today, we have with us our friends with Insentra. So we will handle this stuff up front, and then we'll hand it over to get to the meat potatoes with them. So with that, first thing I want to hit is Work Has No Boundaries contest, or raffle, is up and running again this year. You can hit the QR code, which will take you to the website to enter. You'll see the requirements of what you need to do to be able to participate within the raffle for the brand new Bronco. You can also get there by just going to our webpage, XenTegra.com. But got a cute little QR code for you to go directly to the link. Check it out. Just participate in some calls. You could actually jump in with a call with Insentra and us. That'll be one of the qualifiers for you. So it's something to keep in mind there. So who is XenTegra? XenTegra, we are a reseller, service provider, solutions provider of everything that's within that digital workspace. We help you with your digital transformation to be able to get into a more modernized, disruptive technologies within your data center or the public cloud. Some of the key areas we focus within there is the EUC, the edge computing, as well as any type of security networking that's wrapped within that. And then lastly, the user productivity and the actual persona of those users. So we've been over 10 years now, been running in business. This guy down here, Andy Whiteside, he is our CEO and founder. I've actually worked with Andy years and years ago. When he was a SE at Citrix, he saw that there was a void within the community. There were partners and integrators out there that were just matched with customers to be able to deploy solutions. And that was it. There really wasn't a grasp or understanding of what's out there within the community. And really the key factor that was missing was enablement. Enabling the partners, enabling the customers to be aware of each other, enabling everybody to understand the solutions, what fits for their environment, how it works for them. So that's one of the key pieces here within XenTegra, is making sure that we educate our customers and we educate our partners about what we're seeing out there and what you're looking for in your solutions. We know a vast number of these solutions within that digital workspace in order for us to provide you better recommendations and guidance as you build out your business strategies. And then not only do I refer to partners as other solutions that are out there, but our customers are also partners. We work together within a solution. We're not a one and done project. We're not a vacuum type solution. We actually engage, look at you from that long business strategy, multi-year strategy of your solutions from both on-prem and public cloud side of the house. We are a value-added reseller. We have several strategic consulting areas for our professional services, project-based. We scope those out. We go block of hours, all that wide spectrum of solutions. We also have managed services within our XenTegra Connect team that we handle the actual environment where we can handle support, maintain it for you. And then we also have our XenTegra Connect, which is our hosting environment within our own cloud. We have multiple data centers where we can host your VDI solution, your EUC solution within our data centers, manage and maintain it, and give you administrative keys to that environment working together. Lastly, we offer complimentary assessments. These are gratis. Within these micro assessments, it's a very high level review of your environment. And then you'll see if you go to the link on our webpage, we go into Citrix and different EUCs, VMware Horizon, VMware infrastructure assessments. We also do on the endpoints from an IGEL perspective, database, Nutanix, networking side of the house. These are all these high level assessments that we can work and offer to our customers at no cost. With that, I'm going to introduce myself, John Spallone. I'm a solutions architect and alliance lead for our cloud solutions at XenTegra. I've been here for over a year now. I've been within the industry now for 26 plus years. I've done everything you can imagine, from consulting services administration on up. Recently came from Citrix, where I was a worldwide enablement resource. Key word there, enablement. You'll hear that throughout everything as it relates to XenTegra. While I was with Citrix, I worked with technical training and resources within Citrix, our partner community, as well as customers, making sure that they understand EUC in the cloud and Citrix solutions in the cloud. So that was one part of my role there. As far as today, pretty much I'm just a dad joke. Well, I provide them, but I guess I am a dad joke to my kids. 3 little kids out there. Well, not little anymore. They're big kids. And then I also work with a Zen-like balance between my geekiness and nerdiness. So that's me in a nutshell. That's XenTegra in a nutshell. So we're going to work with Neil and Josiah today with Insentra. Insentra is a partner, long-time partner with XenTegra. We work together. Insentra is a partner that works with us as far as the Microsoft side of the house is concerned, and with solutions encompassing across the board for Microsoft as it relates to endpoints, cloud, desktop, workspace solutions, and then also all of those ancillary collaborative solutions that are out there, your O's and your M's from Microsoft. So with that, Neil and Josiah, I want to hand it off to you too.
Thank you, John, and thank you to XenTegra for letting us participate today. My name is Josiah Muir. I actually have overall responsibility for the Microsoft practice for Insentra here in the US. I have been doing Microsoft Cloud Services for over 13 years, and for those of you keeping count, that's actually before Office 365 even existed. I actually go back to the BPOS days. Way back there. If anybody remembers BPOS, sorry. But yeah, I did those migrations way back when. I kind of, over those 13 years, I've helped more than 400 unique customers with their cloud strategy and cloud migration, mostly around the Microsoft space, but kind of across everything in general. So I just I have the distinct pleasure of not doing the full presentation today. That's going to be left to my colleague Neil, and I have no PowerPoint slides, which is amazing. But I just really quickly want to say, this is a really timely topic, right? We've seen, along with XenTegra, we've seen a lot of our customers interested in migrating their VDI workloads and really all workloads into cloud services to enable, kind of take advantage of the scalability, the multi-region nature. Like, so I no longer have to spend $1 million to spin up a data center. I can just spin up a region instantly, and it kind of changes the economics of bringing your workloads closer to your users, right? And the story we're talking about today is really about running those virtual desktops, and specifically AVD in the Microsoft cloud space. And I think it's a really good topic, especially with mergers and acquisitions, which has been another huge uptick, right? How do you service those users for a company we've recently just acquired that I don't really have anything close to them or in a region, and he split it up quickly. Anyways, I'll let Neil kind of go into it, but that's my little introduction. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Neil.
Thanks, Josiah. I should be presenting something. Okay, you guys seeing that presentation? Yes?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. So quick intro, I'm Neil Hoffman. I'm a solution architect with Insentra. I work alongside Josiah, and Josiah and I have history. We've worked together for a number of years, even at another company in the past. So we've been working together for a long time. But yeah, I focus exclusively in Microsoft solutions, mostly in cloud space, but even dealing with other more legacy Microsoft products as well. But if it has Microsoft in front of it, there's a good chance I've worked with it, or currently work with it, or will work with it. So without further ado, let me jump right in. As mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, just kind of note them down or put them in the Q&A, and we should have some time at the end to go over any questions that pop up. I expect this to run about 30 minutes, give or take, and we'll go from there. So again, quick agenda, we've discussed this already, right? Modern workplace challenges, modern VDI solutions, and modern management solutions. That's the agenda. Right, so if we've learned anything from the pandemic, it's that remote work is here to stay, right? It's beneficial to the employees as well as the businesses. From the employee perspective, it's a better work-life balance. It eliminates the cost and pain of commuting, gives them the ability to relocate to places with lower cost of livings. And from the business perspective, they've learned that it amounts to more flexible work schedules, happier workers lead to more productive workforce. Downsizing offices leads to cost savings, and wise security officers have realized that it's actually easier to secure and lock down user platforms in this model. So not going anywhere. Right, but there's a delicate balancing act here, because the workers are expecting to have the freedom to work from anywhere on any device at any time. Businesses are challenged to provide a more modern desktop experience with streamlined management, all the while ensuring that they're not compromising on security, right? And that's just the beginning. Adding to the mix, things have become more complex, not less. There's more software integrations, more collaboration, and workers are more geographically distant. To top it all off, the threat of cybercrime has never been higher. How do we ensure that we can provide modern and flexible experience to our workers while remaining secure? Attacks have skyrocketed in recent years, and security is front of mind for all business decision makers. Solutions must be comprehensive and provide end-to-end protection for both identities and data. Right, and with the current rate of change, IT departments find that they are being asked to do more with less. Right, so how do we reduce the inherent overhead associated with implementing traditional VDI solutions so we can spend more time on important aspects that matter to us, such as efficiency and security? Right, easy, we look to the cloud. By leveraging the cloud, we can enjoy benefits such as reducing large capital expenditures, as Josiah mentioned earlier, reducing infrastructure that requires day-to-day maintenance, backup, and DR. No more missing out on new functionality that is released right after we implement our solution. Full systems integration between all the operational components. And best of all, maybe, is pay only for what you need and scale as you go, right? That's the essence of the cloud. So let's get to it, right? Here's a traditional VDI model, right? We all know and love it. It's been around forever. As you can see in this slide, most of the care and feeding is associated with the infrastructure in the upper right portion of this image. And managing all of this poses a strain to the IT department. Right? We have physical security, power, cooling, storage, networking, server hardware, hypervisors, guest OS, patching, lifecycle maintenance. How do we scale, right? And there's more. There's things that are not even in the list, like managing golden images and machine catalogs and the like, right? And then backing up and adding disaster recovery to the mix. Goes on and on and on. So this is an old slide. You've probably seen this over the years. And if you haven't, I'll just talk to it real quick. This is the cloud model slide. It explains the different levels of cloud, right? So on the far left is all on premises, right? No cloud. And the blue is what you manage. The gray is what the cloud provider manages. So the on premises on the left, if you're still managing on premises infrastructure, you're managing everything, right? From the applications all the way down to the physical hardware, cooling, storage, physical security, all of that, right? As we start moving towards the right, we start offloading some of that burden to the cloud provider. So the first one is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. That's where the cloud provider takes over like the physical hardware, everything up until the operating system, and that's where we take over. And then moving more to the left, we have platform as a service, also known as PaaS. That's where they take more off our plate, and now we're not even managing operating systems and applications. We're really just managing, the data that's being leveraged in those applications, right? And then finally is SaaS. At SaaS, we're not managing anything. We're just really provisioning, controls within the software stack, but we don't have to manage any of it per se. So obviously, we're looking to move more from the left to the right to make our lives a bit easier. Right? And that will free up time, which will allow your IT teams to transition from managing infrastructure to more valuable and impactful activities, like focusing on clients and business innovation, right? I've seen my fair share of very smart people whose talent is wasted on mundane jobs, like coming up with ways to swap storage arrays while not causing downtime and things of the like, right? What if that brain power can be used to be focused on more transformational initiatives? So let's leave the dirty work to someone else to worry about. And while we're at it, why don't we leverage the same cloud for VDI that we're already leveraging potentially for lots of other workloads, right? That will set the stage for our end-to-end solution. Now, if you take this a step further, often there are business requirements, some of which Josiah mentioned earlier, or there could be others, right, which include the requirement for globally distributed desktops, right? And it may not just be employees, maybe it's contractors or temp workers, call centers, et cetera. From a user experience perspective, like we always want the desktop to be as close to the user as possible, especially if you're using audio and video conferencing, which is a must in today's landscape. So, since Azure runs a global cloud service, we can easily patch all this together. And that brings us to our first VDI solution, Azure Virtual Desktop, also known as AVD, right? So AVD kind of sits squarely between IaaS and PaaS. So it has some components that are PaaS and then others that are IaaS that you have to manage. So it's a little bit of a mix there. AVD may be better for those who want to be more involved with management requirements, maybe have more complex environments, or maybe you're already consuming Azure and you have Azure virtual networks and servers and other things already running. Then introducing AVD would not be too much effort. So that could be a reason. AVD also offers more flexibility because you're managing more. So for example, you can save costs with doing things like auto scaling, turning session hosts on and off during off hours and turning them back on during peak hours and those types of things. Also increasing user density, right? So you can stack more users on a session host, maybe, than having a one-to-one relationship with a personal VDI. Maybe we can get 10 or 12 or 16 or even 20 users on a single server. And then, through that density, we can leverage some cost savings, right? Something else that's interesting here is Azure Virtual Desktop is the only way that you can take advantage of Windows 10 or 11 multi-session, okay? As well as personal. You can do one-to-one or you can do multi-session. So what Windows 10, 11 multi-session is those same core components in remote desktop services, right? Formerly terminal services, has been stripped out and stuck and shoved into the Windows 10 operating system. And the beauty of that is, as you know, over the years, if you've been managing VDI solutions, either you're giving a personal machine to somebody or you are giving them a server OS and trying to make it look like a desktop OS, right? And with varying degrees of success, it's gotten better over the years, but in this case, it's actually Windows 10 or Windows 11 running in multi-session mode. So they truly get that end user experience with a modern OS, all the bells and whistles it comes with in a multi-session environment. And the only way you can do that is with AVD. So that's one thing. However, if you do have requirements to run older legacy OSs like Windows 7 or 2012 R2, those types of things, you can also leverage those with AVD. And best of all, it's extremely versatile. You can mix and match, right? Maybe you have some users or some workloads that require Windows 7 for some legacy app, but the rest of your environment is running Windows 11, right? So you can slice and dice it any way you need to. Okay, makes sense? So again, it's a bit of a mix, right? You're managing endpoints, you're managing the workloads, right? The servers and the desktops and those types of things. Microsoft's managing all the plumbing, right? If you think about like the web access and the gateways, connection brokers, those types of things that are critical, right? Without those things, the solution doesn't work. And not only do you need those things, you need them to be robust and secure and highly available and all of that. So managing that stuff, as you may know, if you've been doing it over the years, it's work, right? Something you have to monitor and you have to make sure that, you have fail safes and redundancies and those types of things. So that's the the non-elegant part of the solution, right? So let's give that to Microsoft. Let's then deal with that, and let's deal with the stuff that's more important to us. Right, so some highlights on ABD, delivering rich Windows 10, Windows 11 experiences to desktops anywhere in the globe, fully integrated into private networks. You could do Azure AD join, hybrid Azure AD join. It's fully integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem, right? It's very easy to deploy and fully scalable. And licensing for ABD is built into the M365 SKUs. So if you're paying for M365 E3 or E5, you already are paying for the license for ABD. If you're not on M365, then there's probably an upgrade path that might make sense for you. But there's a good chance that if you're already on the SKU, you might already be paying for licensing for this. Right. So pretty complicated slide here. Don't get caught up in it. It's really just for demonstrations. ABD, it will seamlessly fit into an existing Azure environment if you have one, right? And if you have an Azure environment, this may look familiar to you, some of these components. If not, it's virtual networking and various components talking to each other. But so if you're already running Azure, pretty easy to just find a way to implement ABD within your environment. And this is exciting stuff, right? This leveraging the power of the cloud. You could spin up complex environments in minutes, as Josiah alluded to earlier. But one thing to note, a bit of caution here, right? It's often a blessing and a curse, right? It's so easy to deploy stuff that you can get in trouble, and we constantly see poorly planned Azure implementations. Maybe they went from the lab into production when no one was looking. Like all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, that was just my lab. Now it's in production. How'd that happen? Oh, it happened because we had some massive outage and we had to get people a desktop, and your solution worked. So here you go, or anything in between, right? So what we find is there's many poorly implemented cloud solutions out there. So that is something to be careful, right? We always want to make sure that we're planning, and planning is the most important part, right? Coming up with our cloud strategy, understanding the importance of things like governance, naming conventions, tagging, policies, restrictions, network design, isolation, security, role-based access control, right? That's a big one. Like, who can manage this environment? Now we're exposing the management plane of our environment to the world. So we want to make sure that it's secure, it's locked down, the proper controls are in place, and only the proper people can manage the infrastructure as needed, and potentially just in time, ideally, to get that level of access, right? Cost management, right? Are we sure we're optimizing our workloads as much as we can to enjoy the benefits of the cloud? Because again, if you don't plan properly in the cloud, it can actually cost you a lot more money than it would have if you planned better, right? And understood what the operating costs are and had some of that visibility before you went and started creating stuff. So that's the good news, is that we're here with XenTegra, and we're trusted partners. We work with customers all the time, coming up with the cloud framework, the various design components that are required for these types of transformational initiatives. So we do this all the time, and that's why we're here. Hopefully, if you guys are considering leveraging the cloud, you'll reach out, and we can certainly have a conversation about what would be the next step. But just like on a high level, this type of implementation would be something we would first just sit down and talk through what you're trying to achieve, what are your requirements, right? And then from there, we come up with a very detailed design specification that we all go through and agree upon before we actually implement anything. That's always how we like to measure twice, cut once, right? Try and get it right the first time. So a bit more about ABD there. Also worth mentioning that if you're leveraging Citrix currently or VMware, and you already own licensing, there are integrations between those platforms and ABD. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds a bit, like leverage your Citrix core components through your entitlements, but then run it on ABD to get the benefits of ABD. So there's a few different models the way this works. I apologize, I don't have VMware in here, but they also have some capabilities. Not going to get into the details here, but if you're interested and you're currently utilizing those products, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you to understand what your options are, if this made sense.
if you don't mind, do you mind if I just throw something in here real quick?
No, go for it.
Yeah, so one interesting little use case for you guys, because of the way the cost model works in the cloud, right, where everything's consumption based. Now we can obviously reserve things to lower costs and stuff like that, but one of the use cases we've actually done several times recently was building a disaster recovery or business continuity scenario for people who use physical devices, laptops, desktops, etc. Right? Because of the fact that we can deploy this with a minimal cost and have like a single host waiting essentially for someone to need it. For the cost of one host, especially when you already own AVD licensing, right? Because the licensing comes with your M365 SKUs. Typically, you might just have it sitting there today, right? For the cost of basically a single host sitting around, we can provide a DR service and only pay as we scale it. So, you know, if one person's accessing, we're fine. If we need another 4 or 5 hosts for a day or two, we're only paying for a day or two of hosts, right? And we can scale and remove those hosts as necessary, right? So that like it's a very big leap from where you have to buy $1 million of hardware and have it sitting around for a DR scenario, right? I can actually build scenarios that are very flexible and scalable, and things that you never really thought about because they weren't really possible before are possible in these scenarios. So I just want to throw out there, just the cost model has a lot of advantages. But it also, like Neil said, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't manage your costs appropriately, you could end up spending a lot of money in Azure too. So it's kind of something you have to balance and manage. But overall, it gives you a lot of opportunity to bring some new experiences and new delivery mechanisms to your users.
Thanks, Josiah. And yeah, that's kind of the fun part of you know, being a solutions architect in the current day and age and working in the cloud. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the interesting projects that have come our way, and the cloud really is, the public cloud is really just a massive set of tools and capabilities that you can piece together any way that works for you, right? For your specific outcome you're trying to achieve. You know, it's very flexible, right? And creativity just runs rampant out there, and there's just, you know, a lot of ways to achieve different outcomes depending on what you actually need to do. So it's fun stuff. Okay, so moving along, the next VDI solution we'll be talking about is Windows 365, also known as Cloud PC. So if you look up documentation online and you see Microsoft calling it Cloud PC, they're talking about Windows 365. Okay, so Windows 365 sits between the PaaS and the SaaS layer, and it's really mostly a software as a service, to be honest. There's really only one component of it that could be platform as a service if you make that decision when you implement it. But you know, it's much less hands-on than AVD, right? And that may be more for companies that really have no desire to be involved with management, right? They just want to like license somebody and here you go, here's your desktop. I don't want to get involved with anything else. Also there's different options, right? How you implement it. And one is specifically around the networking component. There's 2 options, right? When you implement Windows 365, you could choose to use a Microsoft managed network, and that's really a pure SaaS solution. Literally just set up a few core components to get it out of the way, and then once it's set, just leave it, set it, and forget it. Give someone a license. Within an hour, there'll be a desktop waiting for them. That's it, right? It's that simple. The other model is for those that do need another layer of integration. Maybe we need to connect to a different data center and we want these desktops to have line of sight. Maybe there's Active Directory involved. We're doing domain join or hybrid join. Maybe we have resources at AWS that we need to talk to over a private connection, like those types of things. Or maybe we want these to be behind a virtual firewall. We want a Palo Alto in front of these VDIs or what have you. So in those cases, they have what they call bring your own network, right? And you can see here in this slide, the left side is the Microsoft hosted network. And on the lower orange triangle there, you see your cloud PC is living in a Microsoft hosted network. User connects to it, they work, they do their thing, they log out, they go about their business. You don't see any of that infrastructure. On the right side, it's the bring your own network option. And then you could see the same orange rectangle has my VDI in it. However, the NIC right? The network interface is injected into my virtual network. And from there, the sky's the limit, right? I can connect, as I mentioned, to on-prem, to other clouds, what have you. I have more control, right? So something that we would talk about during a design phase. Typically, we would opt for the right side, potentially, just to give you that flexibility in the future, right? Because a lot of the planning of cloud isn't always about how do we achieve what we need to achieve today. We also need to keep an eye on the future, right? Sometimes we know what's coming down the pipe, sometimes we don't know. So it's always good to build your infrastructure in the cloud with that flexibility in mind, so that if you do need to pivot or incorporate additional layers that maybe you didn't know about before, you're not boxed into a corner. So that would be something that we typically would recommend. However, if you just want something like just easy license and go, I don't want to manage anything, we don't use Azure at all, we don't want to use Azure at all, then maybe the Microsoft network would work for you. So either way, these are things that we would chat through, but you get the idea. Right, 2 main SKUs. Don't worry, we're not reading this chart, just showing it to you. These are just the differences, right? You have your Windows 365 Business and your Windows 365 Enterprise. So like lots of other Microsoft products, there are different licensing levels, and each one has different components, different functionalities, caveats, those types of things. So another aspect that we would certainly want to discuss with you if you were going down this road with Windows 365 would be which licensing model works for you. And obviously there's a cost difference between the two. So just mentioning that, not really, as I mentioned, going through the details here, but just more FYI. So again, enablement is super simple, right? You just configure a few core components, assign the licenses, and users get their cloud PC. In this case, you're seeing what it looks like in the web client. So you can literally log into a web browser, be presented with whatever cloud PCs belong to you, and you could launch them right in the web browser. Or there's a rich client, remote desktop client that you can provision to your users, or your users can install them on their personal devices, right? And this is where you have that capability, which you have in VDI as well, right? Where we can have a end user owned device, it could be any device, that is using an application to access a secure desktop. And we can control what data can move between the two. So, all that like redirection stuff, we can block clipboard redirection and drive redirection and printer redirection, all those types of things, or we can enable them, right? Depends what makes sense, or it could be based on certain people get a redirection, others don't, those types of things. It's all at your fingertips, right? To understand what you need to do. But, and think of the other use cases here. Like, oh, we have some contractor helping us with some project. This is short term, but we need a desktop in our environment for him. Fine, license him up, and he's good to go. And maybe you'll pay for that for the duration of his engagement. And then once he's done, you just remove the license and away you go. You didn't have to invest in anything. It's just kind of pay as you go for what you need, right? And it's that same cloud model that's being harnessed here. Okay, so that's really the 2 different VDI solutions in the Microsoft Cloud, right? AVD, more hands-on, Windows 365, less hands-on. There's obviously, reasoning on why you might use one or the other, or use both. We've seen both as well. I recently did a project with a customer that implemented Windows 365 in East US region. And currently Windows 365 doesn't have like a replication option. Now it's probably going to be coming. I know that there is some talk around some of that capability, but for now, this customer really wanted a DR solution in a remote region. So we actually did exactly what Josiah said. We have an AVD implementation in another region with just like a single host sitting there. The cost is minimal. And if need be, we could fail over the users. And if something drastic happens in that main region in Azure East US, they could leverage these AVDs in the other region and go about their business and connect to their network and have access to their data. So again, like the sky's the limit. What do you need to accomplish? Let's figure out how to get you there. We have all these tools at our disposal, right? Cool. So now that we've covered the virtual desktop, let's talk about management. And by management, we're talking about Microsoft Intune. So I'm sure you've heard of Intune by now, but if you haven't heard of Intune, it's Microsoft's cloud-based management solution for Windows 10 and 11, iOS, Android, and macOS. And it supports a full enrollment model with those device types where you have complete control of a device, more for a corporate-owned device situation, and there's also BYOD capabilities. So if it's a personally owned device, Intune has a capability to allow them to safely and securely access the corporate data and keep that separate from their personal device data, and also remove and selectively wipe that data if they leave the organization, and require that they can only access that data with those managed applications and all of that kind of good stuff, right? Pretty flexible. Okay, so how does Intune fit, right? Well, first of all, back to the licensing model. If you own M365, E3, or E5, you already own Intune. If you own Enterprise Mobility and Security, you already own Intune. And if you don't own either of those, and you don't want to own either of those, then you could potentially buy Intune a la carte by itself, or potentially level up to a higher bundle that you currently have to get Intune. There's a lot of ways to deal with all that. Again, those are topics that really fall out of scope of this presentation, but you guys have been consuming these products for years, and you know how complex it can get. But the bottom line is Intune is not that expensive to get into your environment if you don't already own it, right? And the beauty is that it fully integrates with the full Microsoft ecosystem, right? On the productivity side, the identity side, security and compliance side. Okay, so with Intune, and we're talking about Windows devices here, so forget about the iOS and Android and Mac for a moment, right? Because we're talking about managing these AVDs and Windows 365 devices. So we have capabilities to do full OS customization. We can manage apps, right? We could push apps, uninstall them, install them, update them, those types of things. We can harden the security posture of the device. We can manage Windows updates for Windows, Office, and Edge. It integrates with Defender for Endpoint, right? That's Microsoft's flagship EDR solution, which fully integrates with Intune, so you can onboard devices, offboard them, and manage the actual Defender product with Intune. It's got management capabilities comparable to group policy, and we hear that a lot when folks are moving to Intune from more legacy management solutions. And the first question is always, oh, well, what about our group policies? What are we going to do with those? And I mean, look, what we like to do in those situations is first, like, ask them to take a look at those group policies. Like, what are they? Some of these policies have been like decades old, right? From Windows XP, or who knows when they came up, and they're just sitting there. And do you need them? Like, do we need to have that icon on the desktop anymore? Is that even relevant? What we find is more often than not, a lot of that stuff is just kind of baggage that folks have just carried along and think they need. But when you challenge them and ask why they need it, oftentimes the answer is, well, I guess we don't need it, actually. So that happens. Or you say, oh, yeah, no, that sounds like something you do need. Let's find a more modern way to do it, if possible. If not, Intune has configuration profiles in it. That's kind of I'd say the Intune version of group policies, but it could do much more. There's a lot of those administrative template settings that you see in group policy are showing up natively in those configuration profiles already. So if there's something that you're doing, there's a good chance it's already in Intune anyway. So if you do need it, we can transition it. There is a migration path if you need to migrate. And if there's some obscure GPO ADMX template that you need that is not part of the native tool set, you actually now can import ADMX templates into Intune and get those specific settings that you have in your custom GPO template. So it's pretty flexible. I have yet to come across a situation where a customer needs to do something to a device and we just can't figure out how to make it work in Intune. If anything, it's much more powerful than group policy. So compliance policies, so that's very important, right? A compliance policy is something you create in Intune to set the desired compliance state of a device, right? So maybe I want to make sure that it's got BitLocker encryption, and it's got the Windows firewall turned on, and it's got anti-malware, and it's got secure boot enabled, and on, right? Maybe I want a certain level of the OS version, those types of things. So if the device meets all those requirements, it gets a green check mark and it's considered compliant. So that then upstream can feed a conditional access policy. And I can say, you're not accessing my data unless your device is compliant. Or maybe if your device is not compliant, I will let you view data in a browser, but not download data, or anything in between, right? So it's very flexible, and that's where the end-to-end story comes into play here, where you really have the different components talking to each other and feeding information back and forth. And that's really the beauty of this model, right? There's integrated remote support tools. There's a few ways to get that up and running if you need it, which most folks do. If you got people on desktops, you're going to probably need to support them. So there are various ways and built-in stuff that you can use, or third parties that integrate to Intune to support your remote service desk stuff. And you can do everything, right? You can control Wi-Fi's and VPNs, obviously not for these solutions specifically, but if you're managing laptops, you can push Wi-Fi's and VPN configs and the like. So very flexible platform, what I'm trying to say. Right, so better together. Seamless integration, I mentioned this earlier, right? Conditional access policies, compliant versus non-compliant. So user experience continuity, right? So what we do when we do these implementations is we often help the customer, educate the customer to understand what we're trying to achieve: a stateless device as much as possible, right? And remember that term from back in the days of like thin clients, right? You just do a firmware update and the thing just, it works the same every time. It's get information when it boots up, it knows what to do. It doesn't really matter which device you give somebody, it just works, right? That's what we try to achieve with a Windows device. And the way we achieve it is with these modern tools, right? So for example, OneDrive, right? We all know and love it. Well, OneDrive has known folder move, where you can redirect the desktop and the documents and the favorites and all those things to OneDrive, right? That's like the old school version of folder redirection. But by doing so, we set up a situation where a user can get another device, and lo and behold, once they sign in, their data will show up. Now it's showing up because we on the back end are telling Intune to force OneDrive to sign in seamlessly, right? No interaction from the user. We set up policies for that to happen. And then we force the known folder move configuration setting to be on. So we don't want to leave anything for chance, right? We want the user to sign in, and within minutes, all their data just shows up on their desktop in their My Documents folder. We do that with the browser as well. So we'll force Edge to sign in. And that way it's saving their browsing data, their favorites, their passwords, those types of things. There's other settings that we enable in Azure AD that helps roam their desktop experience as well. So we really want it to be that a user can get any device. They can be an AVD today, Windows 365 tomorrow, and on a laptop the next day. And the device is pretty consistent from device to device. There, obviously you can probably find something that's a little different, but from a productivity standpoint, they're getting what they need, right? And it's not like it's a whole day's work for them to reset up their new desktop to meet their needs or give them the information they want access to, those types of things, right? And this fully supports a zero trust framework, right? We hear zero trust touted all the time, from everybody, and it's very important, right? The zero trust concept is more critical today than it ever has been with the current threat landscape. And the beauty is this model feeds directly into a zero trust framework. And the best part of it is that the user doesn't even get that they're helping the security posture of the org, right? Think of this scenario: you give a laptop to somebody, and you enforce Windows Hello, right? And so they boot up their laptop the first time they sign in. Maybe they go through autopilot, so the device provisions, in their home, and they wait 30 minutes, and then they go and they sit in front of it, and it makes them register their face with Windows Hello for Business, and they go about after that. So think about the experience now. So the user gets to turn their laptop on, look at the camera, it signs them in, right? And then from that point, they have seamless single sign-on to all of the enterprise applications, right? So the user is thinking, wow, this is great, like modern, I love it. Look, show their kids, like, look how cool this is. They don't even know that on the back end, you're actually more secure, right? Because you're using, a physical component to access that data. You're actually in a more secure posture than you would be if they were going with a more legacy approach of a password. So those are the types of things that we see that we, help enable our partners to help their end users. It's kind of a win-win, right? The end user is getting a more modern experience with like all the current amazing bells and whistles, and on the back end, everybody is getting a more secure posture and the ability to move towards a zero trust framework with those types of solutions. Right? Make sense? Checking my time here. Okay. Single pane. Again, mentioned this earlier. It's leveraging the Azure AD stack along with the M365 applications, access, single sign-on, RBAC controls, entitlements. So, for example, you know, based on somebody's department, right? If they're in marketing, they are populated into an Azure AD dynamic group, and that Azure AD dynamic group drives an app installation. For example, maybe the marketing folks need, I don't know, Photoshop or whatever. So just by being in that department in Active Directory, that flows through into Azure Active Directory, into Intune. Lo and behold, I get the proper app on my desktop, right? So those are the seamless integrations that we're always encouraging people to look for, those type of dynamic entitlements, right? And this extends to iOS, Mac, and Android, as mentioned earlier. So if you do manage those devices, or you want to manage them, or maybe you're managing with another platform, just think about the ability to manage everything under one roof, right? Under Intune, you look at your configuration profiles and they're all in one place. You could sort them, of course. Like I'm working on iOS, I don't want to see Windows for now. You could filter those out. There's different ways to, you know, manage the portal and look through it. But at the end of the day, like it's a consistent experience across all the devices, right? Same naming conventions for policies, and you know, same types of assignments for dynamic assignments and all of that kind of stuff. Compliance policies, right? You have them, your iOS compliance and your Windows compliance and your Android, and you know, everything is kind of just lined up together, and it makes for a very pleasant management experience. Single pane, as they call it. Right. So one thing I want to touch on here. So Microsoft's constantly adding functionality to these components. So we know that, right? There's always like announcements of this is coming out and that's coming out. And you go in the portal, sometimes you see new buttons that weren't there before with the little preview thing next to them, or those types of things. But one thing about Microsoft's really investing in is helping streamline management. And what I mean by that is, for example, the security baselines, right? They have them for a baseline for Windows, Defender for Endpoint, Edge, and Windows 365. So security baseline is just something you can apply to a device or a group of devices, right? And that one baseline will include hundreds, possibly thousands of settings that harden the Windows operating system, right? If you're doing the Windows baseline. Comparable to those old security and compliance toolkit, GPO baselines, you may have worked with those over the years, with those group policy baselines that just like are so tedious to implement and they break lots of things. This is kind of that concept, right? It's just, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in Windows that can be tightened up and secured to make the device as really as secure as possible. So they just build a baseline in there. You just assign the baseline and let it rip, right? Assign it to a pilot group, have them test, you know, oh, this app doesn't work. Let's change that one setting in the baseline and remove that one setting, those types of things. So just making your life a lot easier, right? You don't have to run around hoping your devices are as secure as they could be, because you're going by best practice Microsoft recommendations with these baselines, right? So we always recommend those baselines. And then auto patch. Auto patch, if you haven't heard of it, it's a new service that comes with Intune, and it manages your patching situation, right? So you onboard your devices to auto patch, and then Microsoft does all of that dirty work, right? Creating the rings and setting up the different ratios of the devices within the rings, and configuring policies where you can easily just check off who gets upgraded to Windows 11 and who doesn't, and all those types of things, like all the back end kind of minutia work, the mundane part of managing patching and those types of things. They just take it off your plate, right? So I point these two things out because, you know, we're talking earlier about like leveraging the cloud and these kind of new modern solutions to take that day-to-day management overhead off of your plate so you can focus on more constructive things, right? So this is an example, right? These two things alone are super simple to implement. Just take a matter of minutes to click through a screen or two, and you just save yourself countless hours of like care and feeding and updating of patching schedules and patching rings and all those types of things. So that's something that they are focusing on, and I think that's a really great thing for them to be focusing on personally. Right, so summing it all up, We talked about cloud-hosted VDI, from highly customized solutions to a simple off-the-shelf scenario, license and go. And then we've talked about the comprehensive cloud-based device management with Intune, right? Single management platform for the enterprise for all your devices, from the desktops to VDI, mobile and beyond. Right, so where to go from here? Again, mentioned earlier, XenTegra and Insentra, we work together. We have a tight partnership. You know, so if you guys were interested, you would be reaching out to XenTegra, and then potentially we would be brought in. That's the type of relationship that we work with XenTegra, and you know, we could talk about what you're looking to do, right? Are you looking to do a POC or a pilot? And we're going to make sure that we delineate those lines, right? We don't want POCs becoming production, right? We want to stay away from that. So there are, you know, we do have some ways and tricks to kind of keep those guardrails up. But you know, what are we doing, and like, what are the requirements, and what are you trying to achieve? Maybe do you have Citrix? Do you want to leverage some Citrix components in your AVD solution? All of that type of stuff. We're happy to help, have a conversation, understand what you're trying to achieve. You know, what are your requirements? Those types of things. And I think that is it. With that, I will pass back to John.
Great, thanks, Neil. So real quick question, where would Fast Track fit within all of this?
Josiah, you want to tackle that one?
So slightly interesting side note. So Fast Track, just for anyone who doesn't know what Fast Track is, first of all, so Fast Track is what I like to refer to it as Microsoft's digital librarian service. And what that means is anyone who has more than 150 seats, I believe it is, of Microsoft 365 is entitled from Microsoft with that licensing to have the Fast Track service, essentially. And like I said, they're not going to be hands-on keyboard and doing stuff in your environment, but when you have questions, you want to be referred to the right KB article or something like that, they're a great reference point to that. So Insentra is one of the 6 original global Fast Track partners. Like I said, globally, we've been doing Fast Track a long time, and we're happy to have that conversation with you. So Fast Track for Azure specifically is not something that Microsoft does all their Fast Track internally for it. So AVD technically isn't directly applicable, but Intune would be. So it's they're kind of like some weird nuances to it. And either way, like if you're not taking advantage of Fast Track today, you absolutely should be reaching out to your XenTegra rep and having a conversation and seeing how we can help you out with that.
Great, awesome, thanks, Josiah. And again, I want to thank Neil and Josiah from Insentra being here with us today covering this. Do some quick housekeeping here. We don't seem to have any questions popped up, so gents, you're free and clear, good to go on that one.
Everyone's sleeping.
What I do want to bring up is November and December schedule. Our upcoming webinars, we have Liquidware on 11/17. Just note, starts at 1:30, and it also is on a Thursday. So just so you're aware of that, to pay attention with the scheduling here. Cameo on 11:30 at 1 p.m. We have Keep It on 12/7. Yeah, 12/7 going into December, 1 p.m. And then Remo 3 on 12/14 at 1 p.m. Workshops and boot camps coming up between November, December. We have the Nutanix files, 11/18. We have app layering done right with Liquidware and FlexApp. And then the Nutanix Error Technology Boot Camp is on 12/16. If you see the QR code down in the lower left, right. Yeah, lower right. It's hard for me. You just gotta imagine what happens is we post this up on our YouTube page once we're done recording, and my little head is in one section of it, so I always get my directions wrong on where we're at. But long story, too late. So you'll see the QR code there that'll take you to the landing page for all our upcoming events, plus our in-person events that we have that go on pretty much everywhere. Also want to hit one more time, the work has no boundaries, QR code. It'll take you there to the website as well for you to go ahead and enter. You'll just need to register for it, and then there's additional tasks, and you'll see that outlined on the web page of what you would need to do to meet a entry for winning the new Bronco. This will be announced next year. So you've got plenty of time to enter, and Insentra, working with them and your XenTegra rep, that's something that would fall within that arena as well. So we can definitely have additional conversations as it comes up. Thank you. We did just have a comment that it was very informative. So Neil and Josiah, you guys hit the nail on the head here. Again, what I would want to say is that once we're done, you'll see this posted at our YouTube page, and that makes me think I'll need to have to add another QR code to this here for future references. But if you go to our YouTube page, you'll be able to see all the webinars that we've had. They're up there for you to view, get that additional information, as well as our podcasts and any other type of events or talking points that we have with our partners that are out there. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for their time today, and that concludes another Webinar Wednesday for us. Everybody have a great week and a great weekend, and if we don't hear from you anytime soon, then you have a great holiday as well. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.